All right. Well, we're here with TCGplayer. I'm John.
And I'm Ryan.
Hi. And what is happening here is we had a coworker of ours named Joe. We love him dearly. And he asked us to give some pointers for the pre-release. He has a tough time building sealed decks. So I'm just going to go through my process, and hopefully this helps Joe and whoever else might be, doing their first pre-release and, kind of gets them on the right track. So first, we've got a pack. It's got 15 cards in it, and we're going to separate them by color. So let's go that. I'm not even going to look at the cards really at this point, just kind of going to get them all organized as fast as I can.
And not to slow you down, but when you say by color, what do you do with like lands, artifacts, multicolor stuff? Does that get its own pile? Does that fold into the other? Like, how do you separate everything by color when there's...
So lots of times at stores, you don't really have a ton of room with which to navigate. So like lands and artifacts kind of go in their own pile. And in Battle for Zendikar, that includes colorless stuff like this. Like I'll just put this with the lands because most of the time any deck can play them. And all multicolored cards kind of go in the same spot. It's not a totally, perfect organizational deal, but it helps. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to look at a lot of cards in a really short period of time, and a thing that helps is just grouping them together. Because at some point when you're like building the deck, when all these cards are organized, you're gonna say, oh, I have a lot of cards in this color and not so many cards in this color, so I can't really play this color because there aren't a lot of cards there. I don't really have a ton of options, so it makes it easier for you to get the whole picture in a short amount of time. Because there's a lot of cards here. So it's what, 14 times 6? What's that number? I don't even know. You don't know either.
I don't know off the top.
Well, it's a big number. It's like, I think 45 or 15 times 6 is like 90.
Yeah.
Yeah, because 30, 60, 90. So it's 86.
Yeah.
Or 84. It's 84. It's 84. So 84 cards is a lot to take in all at once. Man, we really just demonstrated how bad at math we are. So, 86 cards is a lot to process all at once, and it's a lot to evaluate on the fly. So you've got to have some sort of system in place to kind of do it really fast. Ooh, we got a mythic. That's a nice one. Oh, that's going to go in the multicolor pile. Sorry. All right, so... just coming to the tail end of this here.
So this is a good way if you're kind of under pressure for time at a pre-release or an event to get stuff organized. What if you had infinite time? Would you do it any differently if you're practicing at home? What's a good way to kind of get yourself in the right mindset? What do you think about that?
I mean, if I had infinite time to build a deck, how would I organize it? Well, I'd still do it by color because most of the time your sealed decks are going to be two-colored.
Okay.
That's if kind of everything goes to plan. And I would still, I mean, that's tough because what I'm aiming to do is I'm aiming to just play the best cards. I'm not necessarily looking for synergies first because they're a little harder to spot, whereas all the good cards are pretty easy to spot.
Sure.
So I don't know how much I would do different just because this is what I'm used to.
Okay, so we've got the cards split up by color. We got our lands and colorless off to the side. You got our multicolors separate out. So
sure.
What happens next?
All right, so now we're gonna try and cut the chaff, and this is where card evaluation comes in. Like, it's not an exact science. I'm far from perfect at it, but I kind of have an idea in my head what cards are gonna win me a game and which cards aren't.
Okay.
So here we've got a bunch of cards. Like I might set aside that angelic gift. It's not very good, but these cards on average are all, there's no chaff in here. Let's show what like a chaff card is. Like Volcanic Upheaval, instant destroy target land for 4. There's no way I play this card. That's going away. Yeah, another Volcanic Upheaval, that is going away. Green cards, unless my green is crazy good, I'm probably not going to touch it. So I try and think what's good in the set, because in modern kind of set design, there's not a lot of bad cards that you'll just never play. So you kind of, first I kind of gravitate to what cards I have that are really, really good. And right now I have Kiora, which is really good. Felidar Sovereign is okay, not great. Rarity kind of helps.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Do you go through after doing the color separations and maybe pick out, the rares, mythics, kind of the bombier, bigger stuff, and use that as like a guide? Or
totally.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, you want to be playing your best cards, and most of the time, rarity is just kind of an easy way to sort through and see what you've got. So
Sure.
I have 3 rares in black,
All right.
and they're all flying. They're all like very sizable. So I find it very likely that I'm going to play black. I also have pretty thick stack of black cards. So, I mean, Defiant Bloodlord, not a great card, but it's still very big and it flies. So I find myself likely to be playing black. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rares, and now I just have to find the 6th rare we opened. And I don't remember where it is.
Was it in the lands? Did I see?
You might have. Oh,
Light
it's
Cabin.
this.
There
Yeah. This is a card we're not going to play. Unless we have crazy kind of allies. So what I look for in this set first is if I have any payoffs for making a lot of mana. Because with the green decks, it's kind of easy to get a lot of mana. So I've got, Eldrazi Devastator, Breaker of Armies. Not really so much in the way of payoff. It's not really going to be worth making the big mana just to get an 8/9 Trampler. So I'm gonna set those aside right now. That's kind of out. I'm gonna start with the black cards just because there's so much power in them. Like the blue cards are good. Like I have double Clutch of Currents, which is the best blue common. Oh, triple Clutch of Currents. Okay, so I'm probably playing blue. But right now I'm going to start with black just because it clearly just has the most power. So what I do first is I lay the colors I want to play out in a curve, and I put the best colors on that curve. So the cheaper the card costs, the more likely you're going to be able to play them. You're not guaranteed to draw all the lands you want in a given game, but you are much more likely to draw 3 lands than you are 4. So the idea is to have your curve be as low as possible.
Now, I notice you're keeping spells, instants and sorceries, everything all timed together. You're not pulling creatures out and doing a curve of just those and then doing non-creature stuff separate. You're doing it all in one kind of big curve here.
Yeah, that's true. At some point, I will try and get a creature count because creatures are super important. I think you want to play at least 15 because they're the way you win the game. You don't really win the game without them. So it's definitely important to have a lot of creatures, but I do that count kind of afterwards. So these cards are pretty underwhelming. These are going to go aside for now. Like if I'm playing black, these are kind of the cards I want to play, and already I'm kind of underwhelmed. We've got the 3 rares here, but we are a little short on creatures, especially ones that are effective. We've got Gruul Draz Overseer, but Smothering Abomination has a pretty big drawback. Dominator Drone isn't very synergistic with anything here. You're not getting a lot of value out of it. I mean, you've got Sludge Crawler and you've got Mindraker. But Mindraker is also a problem because we don't necessarily have a lot of ways to achieve its comes into play trigger outside of Transgress the Mind and Complete Disregard.
Right, so that's one of the processors. You need to be ingesting something in order to get his
exactly.
discard a card, I think, on that one, right? So, okay, so rather than looking at it and say, how can I make this work, you're looking at what do I already have working for me and kind of approaching it from the other end.
Exactly. You're just trying to maximize your potential based on what you're given. So this is not a very impressive suite of cards. Gruuldra's Overseer and Defiant Bloodlord and Smothering Abomination, while they are big flyers, they all have considerable drawbacks. Defiant Bloodlord, pretty bad for its rate. It costs 7 and it's just a 4/5 flyer. Gruuldra's Overseer is probably the best of the 3, and it's still only a 3/4 for 6. Smothering Abomination, you need to sacrifice a creature every turn, and black doesn't really get access to a lot of creatures. So I'm going to set these aside and take a look at blue. There's no real rhyme or reason to why I'm looking at blue. It just kind of caught my eye.
Okay.
So triple Clutch of Currents seems really good. I'm going to put them in the 5 slot because that way it counts as a creature, and I know when I typically want to be playing it. So that's going to go in the 5 spot. This goes in the 6. This is 4. This is another 2. This card is unplayable. Spell Shrivel's good. This is good. Double Tightening Coils. Roll Mage's Trick is not playable. Anticipate is okay. Normally, in a kind of limited deck, you're going to have a best card. So cards like Anticipate get kind of added value. And already, it's low on creatures, but I think it's really powerful. Clutch of Currents is going to win me lots of games that I would normally just not have any time. Right now I've got a pretty good control shell here.
Sure.
Tightening Coils kind of takes care of the early game. Clutch of Currents makes sure I can kind of keep the board under control heading into the late game, and it also gives me creatures. Coastal Discovery makes sure I stay up on cards. So right now I'm just looking to complement this color with some creatures.
Okay.
And
So now within the set, Wizards kind of builds in certain archetypes and color combinations that are going to fit together by design. But
Totally.
It looks like you're not even considering even that far yet. You're just looking at what this one color can do for you.
Right.
And instead of saying, I've got, blue-black, Devoid going, or blue-red spells matter kind of thing, you're just saying blue is good, I can do some kind of control work with blue, and now we're going to maybe kind of look at a second color to pair it up with and go from there.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
I usually look at all the colors one by one and try and figure out what they want to do. Now the black cards, they really had no plan, so I'm kind of loath to do that. I would rather all my cards have kind of one direction and kind of play on the same team, to turn a phrase.
Gotcha.
Okay, so now I'm going to look at green simply because I have a Kiora.
I was wondering when we were going to get to her.
And Kiora is super good, and if I play green, that means I get access to Kiora. Unfortunately, green is the worst color in Limited. It's just within context. So, the cards are fine in a vacuum, but within the context of all the things that this set is doing, the stuff here just isn't very relevant. A 4/4 for 5, not very relevant. It's pretty slow. This format is quite fast. Blister Pod, not good at all. Yeah, I mean, this just all looks terrible. I don't want to play green at all.
Okay.
Which is unfortunate because Kiora seems excellent.
So would you consider splashing just a little bit of green, at least mana sources, so you could still run her along with your blue? Or not having green, is it worth just saying, you know what, screw it, I really want to stick to 2 colors?
I want to, in the dark, I always want to stick to 2 colors. Also, I'm just going to put Pilgrim's Eye right here because Pilgrim's Eye is a great card and you can play it in any deck. So
Okay.
I'm just going to line that up right here. So to return to your question, I would look at my mana and see if I've got any Evolving Wilds.
Ah, yeah.
Evolving Wilds is kind of the fixer land in this set, and I have none, so can't really go that direction with it. And also another thing to remember is in green there's kind of mana fixing like this. There's also the 2/1 elf that taps for any color.
Yep.
But
I didn't see that one in there.
yeah, in green I only have 1 natural connection and none of the elves. So I'm unlikely to be playing green. I'm unlikely to be playing a bunch of colors. So the best cards I have in green are the ones that I would consider playable. Call of the Scions. Retreat is kind of borderline. Stalwart is kind of borderline if you're playing 3 colors, which I would rather not do. Yeah, and that's the end of the line. I mean, Call of the Scions isn't even very good. I think even though Kiora is good, it's not great. It doesn't really affect the board at all, other than it being a planeswalker and kind of attracting attention. So I think green is okay to scrap. Since we're working with a kind of a finite amount of time, we want to, allot our resources and focus on our strengths instead of our weaknesses. And green is definitely a weakness in this pool. It's out.
Man, I just want to say that takes a lot of determination and kind of devotion to be able to say, you know what, I cracked a planeswalker, I'm not even going to run it. I don't even care. Like, I think a lot of average or beginning players will open that and say, oh man, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to ride this to victory. I'm going to play her every game and she's going to win me. But if you don't have the deck to support it, you're really just doing yourself, a disservice. So being able to recognize when you can't make it work and just, as much as it sucks to push it aside, sometimes you got to do that for the good of the whole deck. Right?
Yeah, there are 2 things in play there. One, the easiest kind of idea to understand. You're not going to draw Kiora every game.
No.
So if you're playing a bunch of really, really bad cards in order to also play Kiora, there are going to be whole games, whole matches where you just don't draw this amazing card, and you'll just get run over by any deck with superior card quality.
Sure. That's
just how it's going to go. Secondly, Kiora, in terms of planeswalkers that are powerful and limited, not really very good. The +1 is untap a creature and a land, so it kind of ramps you, but at 4 mana, you don't really need to be ramping because, okay, so you're going to play 4 mana. On your 4th turn, you're going to get Kiora. And then what? You're going to untap, play a land, you'll have 5 lands. Kiora will get you up to 6. The difference between 5 and 6 is not as big as the difference between, say, 4 and 5. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so while Kiora is a planeswalker and it's super tempting to play it, it's just not very good. It's a shiny toy.
Yeah.
It definitely takes some discipline to just not auto slam your mythic rares in your deck. So what I'm noticing about the red is that it's pretty shallow. There are some good cards here. Touch of the Void's good. Outnumber is good. Retreat is okay. Kozilek Sentinel is good, especially in the Devoid deck. But there's just not a lot here. So this is going to be a color I come back to.
Okay.
But right now, I'm just going to have it over here.
All right, so green's out, red's kind of maybe.
I haven't looked at white yet. So now we're going to look at white. And white, I saw, has some cool stuff going on. We've got, oh boy. So we've got some removal and Stasis Snare. We've got this retreat, which makes guys and pumps them. Fortified Rampart is good for non-intuitive reasons. It's an early play. You'll be able to play it most games. Like most games, you draw 2 mana. If you're only drawing 1 land in a game, you're just going to lose anyway. And Fortified Rampart, it plays a lot of roles contextually. It's not a good card in a vacuum, but it can buy you a lot of time. And in this format, it will kind of take care of their best creature. It's like a white Doomblade. You can consider it like that.
Sure.
Gideon's Reproach, in a vacuum, not the best card, but it's removal. It's fine.
And it does 4 damage, and it seems like 4 toughness is kind of the magic number in this set. I recognize
totally
a lot of stuff can really actually just die to that out of nowhere, even like Kozilek Sentinel that we set aside in red or something like that. You think has like a big butt and it's going to do well, and then it just gets whip-snapped by this thing, and there you go.
We've also got Shadow Glider. Felidar Sovereign, another mythic, it's not mythic, it's rare. It's good, but we're never hitting 40 or more life. So like that's kind of a pipe dream in itself. So a 4/6 with Vigilance and Lifelink is okay at 6 mana. It's not great. So that's not really an auto include right now. Sheer Drop, solid removal. A way to kind of look at what we've got here, because I'm definitely playing blue. I've I've got it in my head at this point that I'm definitely playing blue, and I'm definitely playing this Pilgrim's Eye in my deck no matter what. So we can count the number of cards we've got, because we're trying to get to 23. We're going to play 17 lands unless our mana curve is really high, then we'd probably play 18. I never play less than 17. Some people like to play 16 if they're playing an aggressive deck and they don't need all the lands, but I'm super conservative in that regard. But I digress. Let's count what we've got. We've got 5, 7, 9, 12, 13. So that means we need 10 playables in the other colors to get us there.
And ideally, we still want those all to come from one other color. We really want to keep it to a two-color deck. Okay.
Yes. Because 3 colors, it's just hard to draw all 3 colors perfectly. Even with a help spell like Pilgrim's Eye, it's still going to be tough.
Yep.
So if the magic number is 10, let's try to get to 10. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll probably place that. 7. And now this is tough. We've got to kind of go to the dregs. We got 8. Go maybe 9. Ondu Rising. Probably not what we want to go for here. If a creature attacks, it gains a lifelink. We don't have a lot of creatures attacking in this deck. We're kind of just waiting to hold the ground until we can get a critical mass of, tempo plays. We get ahead on cards, and eventually just win just by being ahead on cards and getting value in that way. So with Sheer Drop, it's kind of a 2-for-1 because it's a creature and removal.
Yep.
So that's kind of the way we're hoping to win with this blue-white deck, is just work a advantage over a period of time and eventually attrition someone out. It's not going to be a short game. It's going to go pretty long. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I'm noticing that white is kind of short. We don't have any more white cards here we want to play. So what we would do is we'd go to our colorless cards and we'd see what of these colorless cards would we want to play in this deck. And I think any deck that we come up with is going to want Breaker of Armies.
Sure.
So let's just slot that in right here. Let's say this deck is now 14 cards. So now we have a good idea of our blue-white deck. So this is actually kind of my process. What I try to do is identify the best colors and the best one color, and then see how all my other colored cards kind of interact with it. And we already saw that green doesn't work, red might work, but it's unlikely that it'll work, so I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at white first. And the white deck is okay. So we're going to set these 9 cards aside and go to black, because I think black's actually going to be great. We've got Ulamog's Nullifier. We've got Sludge Crawler, which is a nice kind of mana sink. We've got a pretty good removal spell in Complete Disregard. We've got Transgress the Mind. Should get the best card in their hand. Dominator Drone looks a little better now that our deck's got Pilgrim's Eye, Mist Intruder, more cheap colorless cards. Smothering Abomination, as much as it hurts to not play a rare, I don't think this deck wants it. Smothering Abomination seems like a great way to kind of lose the board, and we need the board to some extent. Mindraker seems a little better now that we've got a Mist Intruder, a Spell Shrivel, a Horribly Awry, a Transgress the Mind, and a Complete Disregard. I think that's enough processing. Demon's Grasp, fine removal spell. The deck is trending a little more expensive than I would like it to, but I think that's okay. Myers Malice, we're always just going to play it for Awaken. That's another great way for us to get ahead on cards. So there are a lot of expensive cards in this deck. Usually you want the curve to look something like this. It starts high on the low cost and then kind of goes upwards. The more expensive the spell, the less you want. And that is why it's called a curve.
Yep.
But here we have
like that nice bell curve we all remember from 11th grade mathematics.
Totally. So what we have is less of a curve and more of a line. We just have 4 in every spot. We have 4 3-drops, 4 4-drops, 4 5s, 4 6s. That's not really representative or very good, but I think it's okay just because our density of 2-drops is so high that I think we're fine. But let's see if we've got enough black cards here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's enough. That's enough there. But I'm not convinced that it's better than our white. So what I would try and do at this point is look at these two colors side by side and see kind of what the standouts are and what they've got to offer and how I would win a game with either deck. The draw for me to black is that you have things like Complete Disregard. Complete Disregard is a pretty good removal spell. Loses a little value in sealed deck, but it's still a fine early play to get you to the late game you need. Grueldraz Overseer, fine win condition, more removal in Demon's Grasp. We've got Myers Mouse to make sure that their big spells just get discarded before they can play them. Ulamog's Nullifier and Mindraker are kind of live the dream cards. Maybe we will have Resolve to Transgress the Mind or a Complete Disregard by the time we're able to play them. That would be great. That would be definitely optimal. But all in all, black needs a lot of things for it to go right in order for it to kind of get a win. The white deck is a little less powered. There are much less fatties. We have to play things like McKindy Patrol and Stonehaven Medic, which are, by all estimations, pretty mediocre, especially McKindy Patrol. With no ally triggers to speak of, this card is just kind of going to be blocking. It's a Grizzly Bear. It's pretty bad. We have no cards as bad as McKindy Patrol in the blue-black deck. But on the other side of the coin, that's only one card. And it looks as though this blue white deck is going to have a much lower curve, which is definitely appealing. We've got the two drops here. We've got Shadow Glider on 3, Sheer Drop on 6, McKindy Patrol on 3, another Stonehaven Medic, another Stasis Snare. That's unconditional removal. It's very good. So the curve looks a little different. We're a little more loaded up in the 2s and 3s. And yeah, I mean, basically the difference between the two curves is we have -1/4, -1/5, +1/2, +1/3. So on average, we're going to be able to play more spells per game just because we don't need to draw as many lands in a game to play most of our spells.
So before we even looked at how many creatures total or removal versus combat tricks or anything else like that, you're still looking at the curve overall being a bigger impact on your game plan than the makeup of those individual cards.
This is true because I've set aside the cards that affect the board. So in kind of modern Magic, so in sets past, like I've been drafting a lot of Mirrodin lately, and all the good cards in Mirrodin are spells. There are no good creatures in the set at all. So you have to be really cognizant of how many creatures are in your deck. But in this, all the good cards are creatures. There are very few good spells. Anticipate is probably pretty weak here. Retreat to Emeria is good, not great. So that's kind of my mindset here. I've chosen cards specifically because they affect the board. I will probably look at creature count later on, but right now I want to get an idea of, kind of what a curve looks like. And if I deem that this deck has too low of a creature count for what its spells are doing, I will reevaluate the other colors, but this is where I'm at with it right now. So I still do want to take a look at red, because even though red was pretty shallow on cards, all I need to be able to play red is 9 playables. So let's see, we've got Kozilek Sentinel, which is it's good, not great. Retreat to Valakut, Outnumber it's not obvious how good Outnumber is going to be. Touch of the Void is very good. Valakut Invoker I like a lot. And then we have really nothing else that a control deck wants to do. So red is out. That was pretty easy. Yeah, red is out. So right now for me it's between white and black. And as odd as this sounds, I think I'm actually leaning towards the black deck, because at the end of the day I need a deck that's going to be high powered, and I really like this blue-black deck's plan. We've got Transgress to kind of rob them of the best card in their hand. We've got Myers Mouse to keep them kind of down on cards. The removal is middling. It's good, not great. Dominator Drone is just kind of a body that blocks. Dominator Drone's probably the worst card in this deck, other than maybe Anticipate, because it doesn't really fit in with our plan. It's just kind of a 3/2 that maybe deals 2 damage to them. The 2 damage is going to be irrelevant. But other than Dominator Drone, I like what we've got here. We've got a little attrition plan. We've got some discard all over the curve. In a pinch, we can play Myers Malice on 4 mana to maybe get rid of their last 2 cards. And yeah, I mean, I like this deck a lot. We've got Ghoul Draz, Overseer. Man, that is a hard phrase to do. So yeah, I think this is where we're at with the deck. And at this point, I would look and see maybe what lands we can play from here. I would definitely play Mortuary Mire in a deck like this.
Sure.
Because in an attrition game, getting back a creature is just going to be great. So yeah, I would play both Mortuary Mires. Blighted Cataract, if I'm trying to stay ahead on cards, then a draw 2 card at very relatively low cost seems like a gimme. A consideration is Scour from Existence over one of these more expensive cards, but I don't think there's anything here we want to cut. I don't think there's anything here that's going to be worse than Scour from Existence. I think Scour from Existence is just worse than these options. I tend to group the cards that are 6 or more mana cost just all together, because it's effectively the same. It's not exactly the same, but it's close enough.
Right. By the time you're in like that late game kind of gearing, it really doesn't matter if it's a 6 or a 7 or an 8. I mean, you're up there. You're up there. So.
Right. Exactly. So now that I've got my deck built and I've kind of evaluated all my colors, now what I'm trying to do is figure out what my mix of islands to swamps is. And my system for this, it's not flawless, but I don't know it's a flawless kind of system to figure it out. I just count my mana symbols. So let's count black first. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 10 swamps.
Yep.
This is just to kind of figure out a ratio. For blue, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So 13 to 10. So my desired ratio would be close to even, maybe 9, 8. Because that equals 17 lands, which is what we want to play. What we could potentially do is maybe cut a card for a land, but I don't... Although our curve is relatively high, like we've got a lot of 6s and ups, and we've got a lot of 5s, but I think we are kind of drawing enough cards in the mid-game and staying ahead enough on cards, drawing out the game in a way that we are... If all goes to plan, we are going to get to... we're going to get to 5 and 6 mana no matter what. So I think I'm fine running 17 lands in order to get to play one more spell.
Sure.
So this Cataract kind of throws things off. Instead of being able to play one more blue source than black source, I'm probably going to go even just because this Cataract counts as a land. So we'll count this as our 17th land. So right now we've got 16 slots.
Yep.
2 are Mortuary Mires.
Yep.
So I would probably, with this deck, I would probably go 6 Swamp and 8 Island.
So even though we have a lot more low-cost blue stuff, like your 2-drops are almost all blue, and it feels like you're going to definitely want to hit blue on turn 2.
Yes.
Does that go into the math at all? Do those get
It
weighted
actually
a little
totally
differently?
does.
Okay.
And now that I'm looking at it, I think I still might want one more island, because you're absolutely right. That totally plays in. We need an island on turn 2. We don't really need a swamp until... I mean, we don't really need a swamp ever.
You don't even need your second swamp until 6 or more, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and we only need it for 1 card too. That's another thing I try to look at. Make sure, or try to kind of prioritize cheap cards that don't cost double colors. So like, I always tend to stay more away from cards that maybe cost like, 1 red. A converted mana cost of 3, but 2 of them need to be red. That just, it's harder to cast. It's not, labeling it as a 3-drop and being done with it is kind of a misnomer, because the conditions are more strict than just, oh, you need 3 lands. So, and I guess this also counts as a blue source. So it's actually, I need 14 blues, or I have 14 things that need a blue source instead of 13. So yeah, you're right. I probably would actually run 9 and 7 here. So that would bring me to 16 lands. I would run 5 swamps, 2 Mortuary Mire, and then 9 island.
Okay.
That would be 16 lands, and then this Bloody Cataract would be my 17th land.
Nice.
And that's it. This mess you see before you, this kind of how the sausage is made, expose on how to build a sealed deck. I mean, it's hard. Building a sealed deck is hard. That's really all there is to it. I tried to tell Joe this a bunch. He was just like, no way, I'm dumb. But no, you're not dumb. Building a sealed deck is hard. And it's not even clear that I built this right is the thing. That's kind of the thing about Magic. Right. Like, you don't get to find out if you're right.
Yeah, well,
there's no quantifiable way to do it.
Right. I mean, you can take it to battle and play, but then it's just as much a test of you as a player as it is the deck. So
exactly. You have no idea where to place the blame at the end of the day.
Right. So just focus on having fun then, I guess. All right, so if we could distill this down to some of our top tips here, what's the worst thing you could do if you opened all 6 of your packs? Shuffle them all together and make that your deck? Is that like...
Yes. The worst thing you could do is open all 6 of your packs and then throw them directly in the trash can. So don't do that. Don't do that. Or you could do what my Dragons of Tarkir pre-release opponent did to me in round 1. I played the Midnight Flight, and he lost and was very mad, and he gave me all his cards.
Oh.
Yeah.
The old one and done, huh?
Yeah, it was pretty great. He gave them to me. He's like, do you want these? He was upset. I don't know why. The games were super close. I think that's what happened, but yeah.
Right.
He gave me his cards. It was nice.
Okay.
Never happened to me before or since. I had to brag about that.
So you open it up, sort it out by color, try not to get too attached to things like planeswalkers if they're not really going to work for you. And you just kind of work it through one color at a time. Then,
yeah, remember a deck is 40 cards. It's not just your best card. Try and identify your best color, because finding out what's going to complement your best overall color is easier than most anything else you can do.
Okay, now let me back you up here. You said a deck is 40 cards. Why not 41 or 42? I opened all this really great stuff. Surely I can squeeze in a few more.
That's true. The thing about that is your deck always has one best card in every matchup. And while the drawbacks are low, Magic is, at the end of the day, an unfun math and tracking game. And so you cost yourself percentage points, like very kind of low percentages, by playing 41 or 42. It's a pre-release. At the end of the day, you get to do whatever you want. Sure. But part of the fun in playing Magic for me is trying to play as perfectly as possible, and that includes deck building. So if I'm trying to optimize my deck, I build a tight 40 card deck. I try to keep it 2 colors. I don't get too greedy unless I have to, and I'm just trying to build something that's fundamentally sound. I'm trying to get to my best cards, and while I might give up only 1% of value by sticking a 41st card in that deck, that's just something I'm unwilling to do because, like I said, part of the fun and magic for me is kind of riding the margins, I guess.
Okay.
As lame as that sounds, that is magic for me.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. So this has been a really insightful look at how to build a sealed deck. Hopefully, people are able to apply what they've seen here in time for the pre-release this weekend.
Yeah, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, it should be a really great set. So we're excited to play with it. We look forward to hearing how everyone does. So hit us up, let us know in the comments or on our Facebook page. Tell us how you did at your pre-release. And thanks for watching. We hope you learned a lot.
Bye.